record. All right. And there are still some more people. I got a couple messages coming in. So, um, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. This is our second month of Q&As, and I am so excited to have Stephen Wessner join us today. He's with Predictive ROI. Um, I call them my marketing team. They are my marketing advisors. I have learned so much, as some of you have heard me talk about them before. But Steve, I meant to have the book, but Stephen is the author of, look at, I know he's got it, Sell with Authority, which I often reference, and you can, look at everybody signed. Um, we will put it in the chat, but you are able to have a free copy of this book if you are so intrigued after we dig in here today. But in this book, and often in what Stephen and company teach, they like to talk about how you are nurturing your leads. And as you know, with the Expressory, that's an important part of what we talk about and teach. Leads prospect nurturing is one of the three categories of relationships. We often advise people on how to nurture. And so what we want to talk about today is a process called Dream 25 and how you are setting up a strategic list of leads that you are going to intentionally nurture. So I will let Stephen jump in and talk a bit about where this comes from, how they've been using it, and some of the results, the good, the bad, all of the things that come with that. And then we'll open up for questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie, and thanks everyone for having me. So a quick disclaimer, the link that I just put into chat, hopefully I formatted that okay for Zoom chat, but it truly is 100% free. I know sometimes, like, if you request a book and that kind of stuff, they want to charge you for shipping and all of that. Honestly, it's 100% free. You don't fall into some sort of fancy sales funnel. In fact, if you go and order the book off of our website, it actually goes to Jamie, Jamie's team. So Jamie is the one who has several thousand copies in her warehouse, and her team packs and ships it for us. So if you'd like a copy, please feel free to request it. So the Dream 25 piece actually comes out of one of the chapters in the book. In fact, chapter 10, I think, if memory serves me correctly. And when Drew and I wrote the book alongside Drew McClellan, who's the CEO of Agency Management Institute. And we sort of fell into this strategy. And so I'll kind of take you back maybe 7-8 years ago to kind of give you the historical context and then how it really started to work for us. And really what added lighter fluid, she certainly didn't ask me to say this, but I will say that what added lighter fluid to the process is having the expertise of Jamie and her team as part of the process, which I'll share in full transparency when we get to that part. All right, so let's rewind 7-8 years ago. And predictive ROI was a completely different predictive ROI. We were really struggling. We didn't know who to sell to. We didn't know what to sell, and we didn't know how we were going to sell it. I had started a podcast. It was called Onward Nation. Onward Nation still exists today, but we retired it after 1,031 episodes. And now I'm the host of another podcast called Sell with Authority, more aptly named for where the business is today. But so back when we had launched the podcast, we were really kind of candidly desperate for new business. And so I was having a conversation actually with Drew one night and super frustrated because we were overstaffed and not enough revenue to support the staff. And he's like, for Pete's sake, why don't you reach out to people who have guested on your show and ask them if they'd like to have a podcast? And I'm like, that's great. And so then shortly thereafter, like immediately, like as soon as I hung up the phone call, the Trojan horse of sales strategy was born. Essentially inviting somebody to be a part of your cornerstone content, in this case, a podcast, and then opening up the door for a conversation about how that can move into where you could be helpful to that prospective client who is a guest in your cornerstone. I will tell you that I made mistakes early on in the process. Why? Because the Trojan horse, I thought, was like, okay, we're done with the interview with Jamie. Now it's pounce on Jamie for the sales opportunity. And as you might imagine, that feels really yucky, right? So that was no bueno, not a good way to do that. So then over time, what we learned was, okay, having a conversation with Melissa, if Melissa was one of our dream prospects, yes, the interview was the first way to open that door. And I had to do a great job interviewing Melissa so that my job then as a host was to share Melissa's smarts with our audience and really accentuate that, really highlight that, really make sure that our audience got everything that Melissa was there to share. And then downstream, like the first thing was a frame quote, a beautiful frame quote that actually Jamie and team help us design, under glass, a wooden frame. I mean, just beautiful matting. I mean, really, really lovely packaging, the whole deal. So when somebody opened it up, they're like, wow, right? And then want to take a photo on social media. That's what they would do,
right.
Because the frame is so awesome. And it would be something that, they would want to hang in their office. It's not about us, it's about the guest. And then after that, 6 to 8 weeks, something else. Every 6 to 8 weeks, they're receiving something smart. And then what we found was when we built out a strategy like that with a team that could help us support it, a la the Expressory, what we found was not only are we executing on that at the right intervals and getting the right ideas and that kind of stuff or whatever, then it completely changes the game. It's not a sales conversation at all. It's about then reaching back to the guest, maybe 6-7 months later down the road. This is a long-term thing. And then saying, hey, Melissa, thanks again for being a great guest on Renation or Sell with Authority podcast. When you said this, that made me think about that. And you know what? We happen to do that really, really well here at Predictive. Is there a day or time next week that we could sit down and chat about that? Then it's not a sales conversation at all because we have all of this relational context.
Right.
So it's not about sending a gift that they don't need. It's about highlighting their smarts in a new and unique way. And there is some gifting as part of that. But sometimes it's like their expertise wrapped in a gift, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then the timing of that sort of reach back to check in feels not like a sales pitch that doesn't land well and everybody feels yucky. It feels very appropriate to have a conversation because now you're a trusted resource.
Right.
So that's what we've learned through this Dream 25 process, that it's every 6 to 8 weeks. The list really matters. What you send really matters. And it's about developing relationship, not just sending something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's just some highlights. I'm happy to go as deep as you would like, Jamie.
Talk about why 25.
Why 25?
Yeah.
Okay. Holy bananas, Tom Martin's in the house.
I know. Yay.
Now I have to really raise the bar of what I deliver here because he's going to be watching really closely.
I know. Tom's also an expert, right?
You're so full of
it. So why 25? Because in my opinion, as well as Drew's, and we mentioned this in the book, is that it's really, really hard to try to actually develop a relationship if you had 50 people on the list or 1,000 people on the list. Mm-hmm. So like if you have 25 is a manageable number for you to be interacting with, sending stuff to, adding value to, slicing and dicing their content in new, unique ways. 25 is a manageable thing. So from a management perspective, 25 feels like the right number. And also, most of us, if the right people are on the list, meaning each person that is on the list should represent about 5 to 10% of your total revenue. Like whatever your revenue is now, let's say for the ease of math, let's say it's $1 million. Then each person on the list should represent, $50,000 to $100,000 in revenue opportunity, just kind of following the percentages. Mm-hmm. And in any given year, if 3 or 4 or 5 of them say yes, holy bananas, that's a great year for most small business owners, right? So the list doesn't have to be 50 or 60. It can truly be 25 if it's the right 25, a la the Dream 25.
So now you touched on the numbers a bit. You touched about the value that they're worth. Now,
Mhm.
now go into the piece of how much should you budget then to
Oh,
spend on these people? Because I think that number shocks people at first.
mhm. Yeah, and so Eric and I, when we're Eric, my business partner, sorry for the context for those of you who don't know who Eric is. So Eric Jens is my business partner here at Predictive. And when we were thinking about our own Dream 25 and then talking with others like our clients about their Dream 25 and helping them plan it, we came up with this benchmark number of, for budgeting. And our litmus test was, because we use this as a litmus test with some of our clients of whether they should include or exclude somebody from their own respective lists.
Yes.
And we said, okay, hey, Megan, your Dream 25 list, would you invest $1,000 into the relationship with each of these people? And if her on an annual basis, and if her answer was, well, I would with Tom, but there's no way I would do that with Sarah. And it's like, then why is Sarah on the list?
Mm-hmm.
So we started using that as a litmus test of, okay, if you're not willing to invest $1,000 to develop and nurture a relationship with who you are saying is a dream prospect of yours,
Right.
and that dream prospect equals 5 to 10% of your total revenue, if you're not willing to do that, they probably shouldn't be on the list.
And I think that's really eye-opening, because when we talk about this with some of our clients, and then they ask us, okay, well, how much should we budget? Let's look at these proposals.
Mm-hmm.
And then, their eyes get real big. It's kind of like, okay, but it's that way because how much is this person worth to you?
Yep.
And I think it's a good stretch for people. Um, let's talk about some examples because of the quote some of us wrote down. You said they should be receiving something smart from
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the next questions we get along with budget is, well, what should I send? We talked about the frame, which, oh, is Henry still there? I was going to point out my lovely new Forbes frame hanging in the background. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
You were on mute. But along with the frame, books, right, are another great investment. Hey, I remember our conversation was about X, Y, and Z. Thought of you with this book. Read chapter 3. What are some of the other things you've done that maybe have
Yeah.
received a good response?
So let me give it a little bit of a twist on the book. So like we obviously have the Sell with Authority book available for free. If anybody wants to order that, we send it to them, the paperback, the Kindle, that kind of stuff, no strings attached.
Right.
But we don't do that actually for our Dream 25. Now, if they ask for it, we certainly send it. Like if they order it like anybody else, we certainly send it. But if somebody's on our Dream 25 list, then we choose not one of our books, because we never, ever, ever, ever want to seem, and this could just be my issue, I never, ever want to seem self-aggrandizing, ever. So I will never send somebody like a copy of one of our other books and said, oh, what I said here in chapter 5 was particularly insightful. I think you'll like it too. Like I would never do that. What I will do is we will certainly take, like Tom Martin's book or Henry DeVries' book or Joe Pulizzi's book or Robert Rose's book, lots of great books, and say, what Joe wrote in chapter 5 is particularly insightful because and write something just for them on a little, I know this is going to sound really silly, on a little sticky tab, and tuck it into the book, and then send that. So we send somebody else's book as a way to share knowledge and that kind of stuff, never our own, unless they've particularly asked for that, and then we send that from free. So typically a book is touch point 2 and 3. So a couple of authors that we really, really like. And then we've done some really cool things like, chocolate towers, where somebody will get like multiple pounds of chocolate that is like really awesome in this really, really cool visual display. Like they unwrap it and like, holy freaking bananas. That was awesome. That's the type of reaction that we're trying to create. So, and Jamie, you and your team have been amazing in helping us curate special gifts that when the person unwraps it, they can tell that it was just for them.
Yeah.
And so again, this might be my personal bias. We really love spending more on a gift that creates the impact of like, what? When they open it, as opposed to, all right. And it feels like a burden to send somebody a thank you note because you got a thing that you weren't really expecting. I love it when somebody opens something from Predictive
Yeah.
and they immediately send a text or a photo or something, not because we want the thank you, but because it created the impact where they're like, wow. And it was like, how did you know that I really loved the whatever?
Right.
Or, wow, I didn't know that you knew that I loved rum or tequila or bourbon or something, right? Like
Yeah.
it's curated
Yeah.
just for them. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one fun example we had was the car. She had that car that she was in love with from back when. It was
Right.
an older car.
Yep.
And it was like an etched blueprint of the thing.
Yep. On steel,
Yeah,
laser
yeah.
etch.
A laser etched steel print of it, and
Uh-huh.
that went out to her. And you guys got an immediate response.
Yeah. Okay. So great example. Thank you for mentioning that. So one of our clients, her name is Jane Pfeiffer, and she runs an agency called Field Trip in Kentucky. And so we were with Jane last year and her husband for the Kentucky Derby. Amazing experience. Anyway, so during conversation, that kind of stuff, we're like, oh, how did you guys meet? Da 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 da. We come to find out that Jane, in her younger years, she had an RX-7 and loves Mazda RX-7s. In fact, the way that her and her husband Lee first met was sort of like she was driving her RX-7 around town. He was driving a Mazda, excuse me, a Nissan Maxima, and they sort of did a drag race. Like literally, that's how they kind of met, in Louisville. Anyway, so she loves this RX-7. So we're like, wow, her birthday's coming up. So we reached out to Jamie and said, listen, we would love to find something that says RX-7, right? Like really oozes specialness. And Jamie's like, got an idea. Let me research it. So she figured this out. Wasn't that person in the UK?
Yes.
Yeah. So she finds this person in the UK who literally could take the blueprint drawing of her particular RX-7 model and etch it with a laser into a piece of steel and frame it.
Sharp.
She lost her mind when she got this thing in the mail from us.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. And it was in this beautiful case, like a
It was awesome.
nice foam. Anyway, now was she a client at the time, or was that
Mhm.
also a prospect? Okay,
No, she was
all right,
she's a client of ours at the time,
yeah,
but it was like sort of new in the relationship,
yeah,
and because of what she represents to Predictive and the agency, it made perfect sense from a financial
yeah,
perspective to do something
yeah,
like that. And honestly, it sounds like, oh my gosh, maybe that gift was like $1,000. No, it was a couple
right,
$100s, and in a real great investment, like monetarily great investment because of how it made her feel. And that's
right.
the impact that we want to create.
That's the feeling. Mm-hmm. Um, does anybody have any questions? I mean, because we can keep going with examples and for sure. But I do, this takes some time to plan. All right. And our recommendation is don't always try to do it on the fly. When
Mm,
possible, sit down and plot out the year. Or at least 3 months at a time, or 3 months, three touch points at a time. And the touch points again, when possible, you're spacing them every 6 to 8 weeks. And it should be a combination of some, digital, but also physical.
mm,
And it doesn't have to be gift. It can be your smarts.
yep.
One of the things that Stephen sends is printed workbooks.
Mm,
They're, all of the courses that they've taught over time have a workbook that accompanies them. And so we created this beautiful leather binder, and each workbook is nicely collated and tabbed so that they have a reference point and they can add to it.
mm-hmm.
But stuff like that goes a long way because now that resource is sitting there.
Yep.
Yes, Henry, sorry. How do
Oh
I
no.
sleuth them out?
I publish books for agency owners. So how do I sleuth out the agencies to put on the Dream 25 And do I find out like how many employees they have? And if they have a certain number of employees, that tells me they have a certain amount of revenue. Or what else do you suggest?
Yeah, and so part of it you're already doing, Henry, aside from like number of employees, and that is a fairly decent leading indicator, right? I mean, nobody's going to have 20 or 30 teammates if they have a fledgling, kind of shop or agency. But before you get to that piece, it's about hanging out in the right ponds, which you do a really great job.
Well, right.
Right? It's hanging out in the ponds where that agencies of a certain level of success are hanging out, right? So you're hanging out in the Agency Management Institute pond, right? Whether that's individual workshops or at the Build a Better Agency Summit. Tom Martin was a guest expert at last year's Build a Better Agency Summit. Like that is a great pond to be in because, again, typically the agencies that are in that room have experienced some level of success. Otherwise, candidly, they won't be able to afford to go to an event like that and learn from Tom and some of the other great speakers and presenters and that kind of stuff. It's not inexpensive to do. So by choosing the right ponds and seeking out ponds that that you have to have reached some level of success to even get there is a good way to sort of kind of start the initial vetting. And then you can go to other things that are a little bit more database oriented, like that you might find in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, like, number of employees and location and size and history and that kind of stuff. But we're big fans of getting in the right ponds first and then doing the more database stuff after that.
And it really helps. It really helps that for you, Henry, you have a nice, you write for Forbes.com. And so now you have a great way to kind of meet that person and have a bit more of that conversation. That is usually a nice trigger then to put them into your funnel of Dream 25, right? And only a few will go there. And this kind of leads into Tom's question of Cadance. So what we have found, because that's one of the next questions people will ask. We know who now. We know, like who we should be looking for. We know budget. And then it's a matter of how often, but what if I don't have my 25? Do I start it? And we've done it together with Predictive. We've done it in batches, 5 to 10 at a time. We are starting our own series. Now, we work in a few different industries. And so for us, we have a different Dream 25 sequence for, our attorneys versus our how we would work with financial advisors versus agency owners. But what we do is we try to map out at least the 3 touch points so that I have, 4 or 5 months worth of material. And then when I've got a batch of maybe 5 to 10 of these leads identified, that's when I start them on their particular funnel. So they would all maybe get the same touch point to start, then 6 weeks later, the next. Does that help, Tom? Yeah. Stephen, do you have anything more to add to that?
So the initial cadence that we typically recommend is every 6 to 8 weeks that you're sending something of value. And whether that's a gift through the Expressory or some other curated item through the Expressory or something smart. But every 6 to 8 weeks, there's a touch point and continue to move that relationship forward. But I would also say experiment. And you may say, 6 to 8 weeks is too frequent or not frequent enough. But 6 to 8 weeks, I think, is a good place to start. And then you can adjust from there. Going to Henry's question in chat, as far as like how long does somebody remain on the Dream 25 list?
That's a great question.
And Drew has a funny answer for that. And maybe some of you have heard him say it. And that is till either they hire you. Okay, so that seems like a good endpoint, right? Remove them from the Dream 25 list because they've picked up the phone or email or whatever, and they've decided to hire you, or they seek a restraining order. uh, which of course is funny. But in the sort of the other side of that is, maybe they reach out and say, look, in our case, Predictive is an agency. Maybe they say, look, my sister-in-law owns an agency. There's no way we're ever going to hire Predictive. Then take them off the list, right?
Yeah.
So either they hire you or they ask you to remove them. That's how long you keep them on. And then once somebody hires you, then you replace them with a new member of the Dream 25. So there's always 25.
Do you have some examples because I know in the time we've been working together, we've had some come off of the list. What are some reasons that you might decide like, this is not a good fit? I mean, maybe you've had further conversation with them. Is that usually when they're coming off? Yeah.
Yeah, and so there are some instances when you learn something new, where you thought someone was a good fit, and then they kind of prove to not be because of some things you learn during the process. Thankfully, that doesn't happen often if we've done the front end work the way that we should be doing it.
Right.
But occasionally it happens. And so then we remove somebody just because we either learn something about their team, their culture, that kind of stuff. I don't think we've ever removed somebody. Maybe we have, for budget reasons. But occasionally we learn something, about somebody, and then we remove them. But thankfully it doesn't happen often.
Right. When it comes to planning, one of the things one of the reasons we say plot out your first 3 touch points is because often what we find is that people will get into maybe one of these and they'll feel like, well, nothing happened. I didn't hear anything. Right. And it's easy for us to, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. And they stop. But the other thing is, if you don't have it planned out, I mean, and we're talking even down to potential messaging. Maybe that I'm going to send everybody research. I'm going to, as much as you can plan that out and have it ready, the more that it's going to allow you to be consistent with this.
Right.
Melissa Blair's system, we use her CRM, her marketing and sales system for everything we do. So with our funnels, we've actually automated it so that it sends us, we know the touch points that are happening, and it will trigger emails to us when the next order, when the next round is supposed to go out. So we have once you're in, those touch points are going to happen, and we're going to be notified when it's like the physical stuff to get that out. So, make it as easy as possible on your team so that it is actually happening. One of the other touch points we've done and that has been encouraged is one of the touch points should be an invitation to something, right? To a webinar, to meet with you. You guys have had hosted events, right? Before Baba, I think it is.
Yep.
And some of these people have been on the list for, you should come meet with us, right? And so that way it's another opportunity for you to have that face-to-face conversation.
Yeah. And the reason why we're big fans of you or everyone here, why we're advocates of you taking advantage of a similar type of strategy, is because so the way to slice that apart, think about, is there an opportunity where you might be going to an event, in this case, Build a Better Agency Summit? We did this as an experiment last year where we reached out to, like, our clients were going to be in the room. Some of our prospective clients are going to be in the room. Some of our strategic partners are going to be in the room. Some of the members of our peer group, owner group inside AMI were going to be in the room, right? They were all going to be at the summit. There's like 300 and some people, and we knew a whole bunch of people in the room. We're like, oh, wow, this is amazing that we're all going to be there at the same time. Then we decided to start comparing calendars to see who was going to be there Sunday night. So like family day. So if you're a member of AMI, that was like the Monday. And then Tuesday, Wednesday was the sort of the public version of the summit. And so we started reaching out to people who we knew were going to be there and how many of them were going to be there Sunday night. And could we do like some sort of cocktail kind of appetizer sort of thing in a place nearby? We found out that there were going to be 22 people that were going to be in town in a mix of our prospective clients, our current clients, partners, peer group owners. So 22 of them, all sort of across those 4 categories, where our schedules aligned. And so we got together for drinks and appetizers. Nothing
Yeah.
crazy. You know, it cost us $1,200 to treat 22 people to like 3 or 4 hours of drinks and appetizers. And it was cosmic. It was awesome. And the cool thing about it, many of those people were meeting each other for the first time. And the thing that they have in common is you.
Yeah.
Right. And all of those conversations going back and forth and back and forth. Oh, predictive to that for you. Oh, predictive to that for you. Oh, I didn't know that you were in that workshop too. I was there too. Wow. And then you leave with all of this really cool energy. So I would highly encourage you to find the right pond for you and then tack something on at the beginning of that pond and invite your prospects to hang out with your clients, because the thing that they have in common is you.
Jennifer, you've had that experience before. NM Northwestern Mutual's big event, right? You've invited people to get together.
Yeah, I didn't do it quite like that last year, but because there's always so much going on, kind of trying to figure out how that fits in and stuff with where the space is and everything that works with people's calendars. But yeah, along those same ideas of, hey, they're already here. They're, can you meet them where they're at while they're here? And then like I did gift baskets and everything too at their hotels when they came into town, so there'd be something special for them when they arrive.
Oh, look at that, Stephen. That's a good idea too. the little in the room welcome.
There are so many different ways. If your goal is, in my opinion, this is what the goal ought to be, but I get it that this is my bias. It isn't to sell anything. I think we could probably all agree on that. The whole goal is to help your dream prospects and your clients and so forth feel special, because they are. And this is an opportunity to show them how special they are by doing something really cool for them without any expectation of return. And if your goal is no expectation of return and your goal is just to make them feel special because they are, wonderful things happen.
So I read that to build a trusted long-term relationship, people need to know 3 things. They need to know that you understand them, they need to feel validated, and they need to know you care. Right? And those little touches, those little personal touches, you're doing those things. You're showing up, you're showing the understanding of what their needs are, what their pain points are, and here's some things that might help you. When you show up and you give them these gifts and these just because, you're validating their worth, right? Like, you are special to me, right? And then you continue to show up and develop that relationship. You obviously care. You care about me, right? And so that's what's creating these long emotional connections you have with these people. So when it comes to events, one of the ways, if you're going to make these invitations, one of the ways to be a little bit more strategic about it is to kind of break the script from what would normally be an invitation to an event. How would you normally get invited to something? A digital, an email, an invite, right? And if it's in the mail, it's usually just a card. You're invited. So what could you do above and beyond that that would shake it up? Like, this is not normal. These people are amazing. So what if that invite went out with something related to your time together? I mean, you described that event as cosmic. We're going to get together for some drinks, right? What if that invitation went with something that's going to set up the feel of what happened in that room? Because now I'm already getting excited. Oh my God, I can't wait. These people are amazing.
So let me give that back to you. Make sure that I'm understanding. So are you asking me, like, how did we invite people and set that up?
Well, I'm saying that's one of the ways you could, but yes, how did you? But I think last year was just a regular invite, right?
It was super informal.
Yep.
But I will say that we're looking for ways to like raise the bar and make it that much more special. But so last year, just as sort of like an experiment, would like people actually do it and come, and would they find value in it? It was a lot of emails and text messages.
Right.
And what we found, and what was so awesome, this just like blew me away, is that I started getting text messages and emails from people who are like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing that you thought of me. I'm like,
Aw.
why wouldn't I think of you? You're awesome, right? And it was
Validate
like
'em.
all of a sudden people felt so amazing to be
Mhm.
included. And I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, like I never expected that. And
Mhm.
it was really, really cool that we took this opportunity to just kind of pull some people together. And the majority of them were like, wow, that was so awesome that you thought to invite me. And I'm like, that's the significance of an invitation, even if it's just an informal text,
Right.
right?
Right.
It doesn't have to be something like grandiose, I guess is my point.
No. No, because you validated them. And I've always said the gift, it doesn't, sometimes the gift is your words,
Right.
right? That
Indeed.
alone.
So Tammy sent a question in chat. So Tammy said, but she sent it as a direct message. So Tammy, I'm just going to go ahead and read this for everybody. So is this for prospects? It sounds like, but I'm confused when you mentioned these people should represent 5 to 10% of your revenue. Wouldn't they already be customers? Okay, so we sometimes blend this together, Tammy. We absolutely do something very special for prospective clients. No doubt. So pure prospects, that's where the 5 to 10% comes in, right? Because we want to make sure that if we're investing about $1,000 per prospective client on an annual basis, that we're doing that with right size prospects, as sort of crass as that might sound, but right fit prospects. And then do we look for opportunities to love on existing clients? Absolutely, which is the whole Mazda RX-7 kind of example, because we're firm believers in loving on existing relationships too, right? Is a way to really benefit the business and client retention and all of those other kinds of things. But we love our clients, so we're looking for ways to express how we feel about them, and so we do that for both. But the 5 to 10% is for prospective clients, so that because that's sort of one of the qualifiers to get on the list.
Is that they would be worth that much to you.
Right.
Does that make sense,
Okay.
Tammy?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
But
Henry, the expression about raising the bar, I'm not sure I remember what you're talking about.
Jamie, you and I were sitting in Orlando at the table, and you were giving me golden nuggets of what I should do. And you kept having this expression about, it was like taking it to the next level or raising the bar. I thought it might be a common expression you had, but the learning point was going back to what what Stephen just said. Oh, there was a Freudian slip. Going back to what Stephen just said, about don't do it the usual way, break it, make it different.
Yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot, but
I know. I wish I
come to
could remember.
mind?
Elevate. I don't know. That would be the word.
Elevate.
There you go.
Elevate was the word. Thank you.
Okay.
So
Yes.
talk about elevate for a second, please.
Well, there's a number of ways you can do that. And actually all this conversation about these events that we've been talking about, one of the blogs I'm working on is how you used shared experiences. So when you have connected with somebody, be that for an interview, when you've had an event together, when you've spent some time together and you reference that shared experience somehow with your gift or whatever you're giving, right? That alone elevates the gift. It creates a very deep emotional connection. Our example, remember the t-shirts we made for getting stuck on the Disney ride?
yeah.
That was an example of a shared experience. No one's ever going to forget that. And
Nope.
when we pull that shirt out, we're going to remember how much fun we had together and the bonding, right? Even a podcast interview has that same connection for us because you made me feel smart. I probably made you feel smart. We shared some stuff together. We learned from each other. It's a good feeling. And if I bring it up again, I have created in with a gift or whatever you're giving. I've elevated that experience. Does that help? Okay.
Yes, that's really great. I just think it's a great philosophy you have that, and I'll put it in different words. Don't strike with half measure. Don't do this half baked. Or as you fishermen say, don't do this half bass.
Well, that was the term.
Go all the way.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to add something to that about doing it half baked. When you cut corners, the recipients see that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you go all in, the recipients see that too.
Right.
And it makes a huge difference.
Stephen, I have a buddy who, oh, sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead, bud.
Stephen, I have a buddy who's a stand-up comedian, Emo Phillips, and he has this expression of, oh, it is, I am sure it is the least I can do. So if the message comes across, this is the least I can do, then you're not creating the emotion that Jamie and you were talking about.
Right.
The example I give there was working for corporate world, and it used to be that when you worked on a big multi-year project, you'd get bonuses, a couple $1,000s as a thank you. And one year they cut back, and many people had worked on a multi-year project, and they gave everyone a $25 gift card to the cafeteria as a thank you. You might as well have kept it. It was basically a slap in the face at that point, right? Like,
yep.
People can, what kind of, emotional value did that have? Because you talk about demotivating, right?
Mm-hmm.
What extra effort am I putting in now?
Right.
So
I'm certainly not trying to suggest that everyone on your Dream 25 list that you become Oprah and you're like, you get a car and you get a car and you get a car. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that, like, when I get a gift from Henry, which he has sent me several, like, he knows that I love the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians, and I have been a fan of the Cleveland baseball team for my entire life. That's where I grew up. And so the very first thing that I received from Henry was this collection, this assortment of, the other thing that I love about baseball is I love the history of the game, and he knows that. And so I received all of these amazingly awesome curated cards, player cards from players back in the 60s. And I'm like, what? And I learned some new stuff about my team that I've loved my entire life. I'm like, oh my gosh, Roger Maris, who had the home run record up until like this year, the American League home run record that Aaron Judge broke, like, he used to be a Cleveland Indian. I had no idea until I got Roger Maris's rookie card from Henry. And when I opened it up and I'm like, oh, where does he get this stuff? Because he and I are both a little bit of baseball historians, although candidly his knowledge is way better than mine. And so it's like he specially curated this thing because he knows I love baseball, and in particular the team, and in particular the history. So when you get something like that, I mean, my wife will tell you, like, I exclaim, I'm like, holy bananas, where did he get this stuff? That's the reaction that you want to get.
My favorite reaction that you guys got for your recent Dream 25 list, when they started it, someone came up to them at the conference and said, I don't know what I did to get on this list, but thank you.
Yeah, she got
Right.
she got one of our towers, and I've known her for years, but she came up to me and she gave me a big hug and she said exactly that. She's like, I don't know how in the world I got on your list, but that was amazing.
Right.
And then she's like whispered, she goes, I ate 5 pieces this morning. I'm like, all right.
Nice. It was good. All right. Question. What do you recommend for the Super 25 pond? Oh, is this your strategic gift? Strategic partners?
This comes from Pamela Slim, the
Yeah,
widest
your
net that you should
strategic.
have ponds. So Stephen is on my pond list.
Mhm.
Drew's on my pond list. Before I knew you and all this, I'd shared a story about this with Stephen, that some mentor when I was starting out 30 years ago gave me this strategy. You guys have taken it to the nth degree, but it's the people who gather your prospects where they go to get smarter.
Yeah.
So Stephen said, you and I were in Orlando at Stephen and Drew's event. We learned lots of great information, but more important, we were in a pond with
That's our
32,
pond.
prospects, great prospects. And I told the guy next to me, I said, how many people do you have at your agency? He said 20. I said, okay, I'm going to keep sending you gifts until you file a restraining order. And he said, I like gifts.
I like those guys. Yeah. Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is actually another way to use a Dream 25 list. Ooh, today's blog, Henry, you just got an email. Today's blog was about that. Strategic partners. So you could do the same thing. These are people in your, there you go. I don't know if you can, everybody can see. Pamela Slim wrote a book called The Widest Net, and she talks about the communities where your prospects or where good connections live. The people that run those communities would be great strategic partners, and you should think about nurturing the relationships very similarly. So some of our clients have a Dream 25. They do the same thing, a series of touch points just to stay in front of these people, because you want to be their go-to.
Yep. Indeed.
So same thing, you're going to plot out touch points with them.
Yeah, Pam's book, Henry referred to it. Her book is called The Widest Net. It's brilliant. So would highly recommend her book. And it's, in the book she proposes, or she calls these types of relationships, she calls them peanut butter and jelly relationships. Right, which is such a great metaphor, because I love peanut butter and jelly. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so I'm like, when she said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so perfect, right? Not competitive, but super delicious and lovely together. Peanut butter and jelly relationships.
We are going to, in one of the Q&As, Carly Cunningham is going to talk about, there you go, Widest Net. Henry's got all the books. You got one of Tom's books in there? We're going to need to get one of Tom's books in there. That was a great book too.
The Invisible Sale.
Tom Martin.
Yeah.
I write for Forbes.com, and if we want to talk each other offline, I'd be interested in considering writing about you and your book.
Well, twist my arm, Henry.
Right?
Just twist my arm.
And maybe you too can have a framed article in your office behind you. With the lovely Jamie Shibley is showing.
Exactly.
Hey, you told me to read her book. I read her book. I reached out. I wrote about her in Forbes. Found out she's a John Legend fan. Sent her a backstage pass to a John Legend concert, and said, "Now let's get one that's live where you can go backstage with John Legend." And Susan Beyer, another part of this incestuous group. I'm going to spend the weekend in Phoenix with her, and we're going to have breakfast with Pamela on Saturday.
That's her goal, right? Is to actually meet him.
Oh yeah. So I'm on the.
You're going to make that happen. Yeah,
I am going to make that happen.
That's right, and I'm going to come along, because I don't know why. All right. So let's see. I know we've got a few minutes left, and we'll take a few more questions, but just a couple. Let's see, points. Ooh, Garth Brooks, another good one. So next month we are going to be talking with Lori Hybe of Keystone Click, and Stephen brought up the podcast Trojan horse model. So we're going to dig into Lori's model and how she used relationship building to develop her successful podcasts, and dig into questions around that. And again, it doesn't have to be that you're using a podcast as leads, but it can inspire some other relationship building efforts. I am going to put the link to register for next month's Q&A in the chat. So you have that. And what else do we have going on? And then don't forget to take advantage of Stephen's offer if you need a copy of his book. Some fantastic planning there. And Tom, I just have to hear you throw out the word you use in your book that is so difficult to say about these multiple touch points. It's my new favorite word, though.
Yeah, everybody loves it's propinquity. Everybody loves it, but the publisher wouldn't let me title the book propinquity because no one can say it or spell it, so they wouldn't be able to find it on Amazon.
Oh, that's probably good
So
advice.
we negotiated. I got to have a chapter.
Okay, a whole chapter.
Did you
You can have
make
a
up this
chapter.
word, or is
You
this a
just
real
can't title it
word?
that.
It's a real word. It was some research, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, it's a sociological. It's an actual thing. It's the science of relationship formation. It's comes from the social sciences. And no, it's real. Everybody just thinks I made it
From the
up.
social sciences. We're going to talk.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
what the
no.
Forbes article's got to be called propinquity.
Oh no, it's
Oh no, my editor wouldn't allow that either.
No, they won't. Nobody will let you use it. I promise you. I
Yeah, we'll
tried
use
like
it
in vain.
It'll be in the article,
That's
not
right.
the title.
I get- Hey, a paragraph.
Yeah.
I'll take a
We'll
paragraph.
talk.
That's
We'll
good.
talk.
All right, we got a few more minutes. Any other questions? This has been fun. I hope you guys have gotten some good ideas.
I picked up another word. I think it was also from Tom, during our Sell with Authority interview, Tom. He said the word redonkulous during that interview. And I'm like, oh, I'm totally stealing that word. And so now I say it around the house. I'm like, that's redonkulous. And my wife's like, stop. And I'm like, it's an awesome word.
It's perfect for you with your holy bananas and all that. It's better for you than me. You can just have that one. Because my wife's already like 30 years beyond your wife. So I'm not allowed to say it at home anymore. And my kids are totally over it.
Right.
So have that one. I do have one quick question though, because it's something that I always deal with. When you put all this effort, especially when you send something that you've really put a lot of effort, like a clutter buster, 3-dimensional, you're not just a traditional, gift or something, and you get crickets. What do you tell your clients in terms of like, should you take that as a signal that maybe you should get this person off your top 25, or just how do you talk them through the disappointment of, man, I just spent a lot of time and effort and money and I didn't even get a thank you. Not that that's ever happened to me. I'm asking for a friend.
Right. We were just talking with someone about this with their holiday mailing. The one, there's a couple of things. Unfortunately, done is done, and some people just do not take the time to respond. It's way too common. But test something different, right? Was it the thing? Was it the timing? One way you can help along a response is set up like a question. So when whatever it is you gave, put something in there that's like, I can't wait to hear, tell me what you think about X, Y, and Z, or let me know how you use this to celebrate, or let me know what you do, right? But you're almost asking this question where it's going to, oh gosh, I need to answer them with this. That moves it along a bit.
That's a good idea. No, it's a very good idea.
I don't know, Stephen, what are your thoughts on, what do you do with do you keep it going?
Yeah, we've experienced the same thing, and I totally appreciate what Megan just put into chat. Megan, I'm the same way. You and I have the same sort of cadence on that. It's like I always want to express a thank you, and then sometimes I don't. I forget. I'm embarrassed to say I do forget, and then I don't, and then I feel like the time has passed, and then it feels like this overwhelming feeling of guilt because I forgot. So. My point is, and so when I feel that way,
that's great.
Like when I feel that way, when someone has sent me something, that then causes me to give grace to the recipients of what we send.
Yeah.
In realizing that everybody's busy, that kind of stuff, whatever. And then I have to remember my goal in sending that was not to elicit a response or a thank you. It was to give the whatever because we felt that was important. No expectation of return.
That's great.
Right?
Yeah.
Because when we expect something, this is just me and my bias, and I totally get it if this doesn't feel right to you. But I feel like if I send something and I'm expecting and I want the thank you, that's more about me and not them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I remember one time sending I touched somebody 52 times over 2 years before they finally called and said, we'd like to hire you. And we were literally about to take them off the top 25 list. And that day, like, talk about a God wink, that day, You say, well, no, we have everything you've ever sent us. It's right here in my file drawer. Like, well, gosh, you could have like said howdy once.
Right. Isn't that the funny thing?
Email, got it.
Yeah, and they're probably all like right there. There's this nice big pile of Tom stuff,
Yeah.
right? But
he
like,
he had a file drawer full of stuff that we had sent him. The agency had sent him. I was like, well, you could have tossed a kid a bone and like a little thank you here and there.
Right.
Got it.
That's a redonkulous story.
It is absolutely redonkulous. Holy bananas. I mean, in fact, I think I said when he called me, holy bananas, it's you.
Oh, wait.
But I think I'm taking Henry's tip. I'm just from now on sending a copy of Emily Post as the follow-up to any non-thank you Clutterbuster. That's freaking hilarious.
What?
You're either going to piss them off or they're going to love you to death. One of the two. That's a black and white response on that one.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
What is Emily Post?
In the text chat,
Yeah.
he said, send them a gift copy of Emily Post.
Oh, what is that?
When I asked the question, what do you do when nobody says thank you? He said, send them a follow-up is send them a copy of Emily Post.
No.
That's
He's
awesome.
good.
This has been fun.
All right.
Indeed.
Well,
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thank you all for your time. I hope this was helpful, and we will see you next time. Appreciate it.
Okay.
See y'all.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.